Welcome to the Investor Dave Show, where we mostly talk about real estate, but we also talk about business, entrepreneurship, a little bit of Bitcoin, and social events, and how it affects you as a real estate investor. Today's topics are interesting. It's going to be from why are people moving from larger urban sectors to the smaller rural sector? Should you be buying commercial space in those large urban centers, and what would you do with them? Eviction moratoriums, and how that's affecting the real estate market and real estate investors. And the last thing is going to be Keystone Pipeline cancellation by the soon-to-be President Joe Biden. So sit back, relax, and let's start the show. Okay, so first off, let's talk about people migrating from the large urban centers to the secondary markets. Why is this happening? And let's look at big companies like Facebook and Twitter. They have basically said that their team, their staff, can work from home, and it's probably going to be on a permanent basis. Now, I do not think this is going to be the norm, okay? I think that's awesome for Facebook and Twitter employees, but if you look at government agencies, service providers, things like that, they need office space for their team to come in so that they can provide a service to the public, right? So I don't think offices and that will go away forever. It's a COVID-19 thing. Now, let's look at how this affects real estate investors in the secondary markets, okay? So these people that work at these big companies, now they're told that they can basically work from anywhere as long as they have a laptop and Wi-Fi. So think of this, the cost of living in these major cities is obviously a lot higher than a secondary market like I live in. So when they decide to work from a different place, they look at somewhere a little bit more rural, right? Where they get more bang for their buck. The cost of living is less expensive. They could possibly live on the lake for the same amount of money that they would have bought in a condo in downtown big urban centers. So if you're looking at investing in secondary markets, now's maybe a good time to buy income properties because you're going to have people flocking there, right? Now, like I said, I don't see this being the norm forever. So if you're wanting to invest in large urban centers, this could also be a good thing for you. Because when this pandemic comes to an end, and it will, right? All things pass at some point, right? This too shall pass. What if you get ahead of the curve? What if you're thinking, okay, everyone thinks this is never going to end, which is not the case. What if you start buying office spaces in these large urban centers that are not desired right now, but when the people and the jobs come flocking back, you're ahead of the game and you purchased it to either rent out to businesses. Or another option is if you buy those commercial buildings right now that might have lost value because people have left, what if you start transitioning those office buildings into apartments, right? Thinking ahead, when the people come back, maybe they do work from home, but maybe they work from home in a large urban center. People do like big cities, right? People like the action, people like everything that comes with a big city, so odds are people will move back, okay? And like I said, if you can get ahead of the curve and have purchased a commercial building, made it into apartments, you might be looking at this as a great opportunity to get ahead of that curve and make some money when people come back. Secondly, let's talk about eviction moratoriums. What does this mean? And I can talk specifically about Ontario because that's where I invest and that's where I'm from. I know there was also talks about doing it in New York, but let's focus on Ontario, and I can give you first-hand experience. Now, the Landlord Tenant Board in Ontario, which is the governing body for landlords and tenants, they're pretty much in the name, but they have basically said that everything is continuing business as usual in this lockdown. However, there won't be any actual evictions. So what does that mean? I'm a landlord, obviously, and a real estate investor. If I have tenants that don't pay rent, I can't evict them. However, I still follow the due process, okay? I still serve them the paperwork. I still file everything with the Landlord Tenant Board. So I can still do everything the same way that I did before. It's just at the last section of it, we just can't evict someone, okay? But that, again, will lift at some point, and they will have evictions again. This isn't only for renters either, because people always think eviction is just for landlord and tenants. If you have a house and you haven't made your mortgage payments and the bank has either decided to foreclose on you or power of sale, two different options that work in different scenarios, I won't get into that today, but if you have that as well happening on your house, you're in the same boat. The sheriff will not evict you right now. Doesn't mean that the lawyers and the banks aren't getting the process going. It just means that they physically will not remove you from your dwelling. Now that will lift at some point because people are thinking you don't have to pay rent, you don't have to pay your mortgage right now. That is not true. Everything is still normal and in effect. They're just not going to physically remove you from your apartment, from your dwelling. However, that too will come to an end. I just wanted to add some clarification on the actual moratorium, that everything's the same, it's just that last part where they actually remove you. So as a landlord and a real estate investor, what should you do? Okay, Dave, why are you telling me all this? What I suggest is obviously work with your tenants, right? They're your clients, they're your customers. We do this all the time. We make payment plans with them. We work with them, right? The last thing I ever want to do is evict someone. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't help anyone, right? But that is the last straw. Now, what you want to do as a real estate investor and as a landlord is try and come up with payment plans. They sometimes work, they sometimes don't, but at least you're trying. And also follow everything that the landlord tenant board tells you to do. If they tell you to file certain forms, continue with that process. So you've tried the payment plan option, you've tried communicating with them, you've tried working with them, it still isn't working. Unfortunately, you'll have to file the paperwork, and then when the eviction moratorium lifts, they're going to get evicted if they don't pay, right? At some point, you can only work so far if the other side's not working with you. So that's what we've been doing with our tenants, working with them. But again, there's two sides to every story, and it takes two to tango. Last up, let's talk about President Joe Biden's exiting of the Keystone deal, okay? Now, how is this going to affect Alberta? Alberta is a oil province. They depend on it, right? They fluctuate. Their market goes up when oil is good. Their market goes down when oil is not so good. So how is this going to affect the real estate investing market in Alberta? In my opinion, I think it's going to hurt it. Keystone was a major thing that they had talked about, I think, for almost 10 years now. And the economy there was just waiting for that to happen because there would be another boom. They would be supplying the states with oil, and that would be a massive drive. The housing market would have gone up. Now, the fact that Biden has basically identified that he wants to get rid of it in the first couple of days in office is not good for that province. So as a real estate investor in those provinces, I'm sure people are not overly happy with this. Their market appreciation might take a hit. Their future anticipated evaluation of their buildings will not be where they wanted, right? Now, who knows what's going to happen down the road with the Keystone, but the fact that Biden is already saying that he is out on that deal cannot be good for Alberta. At the time of this recording, Biden is not yet the president of the United States, okay? So what does that mean? Who knows? It might not happen. He might not actually cancel the Keystone, right? It's all speculation at this point. But if you're in Alberta and you're an investor in that actual province, you might be able to pick up some properties at a good price if it does get canceled. And the other thing too is you don't have to stay in your province or even in your country, right? You can invest other places. So the Keystone is not the end of the world. It will affect the local economy. However, it's not going to affect you as an overall real estate investor because you are not just attached to one place. So I want you to look at this glass half full, right? Let's say the market does take a dip. As a real estate investor, you might want to purchase at that time, right? I know the province is already more landlord friendly than tenant friendly, so that might just be another reason to invest there. You're getting into a market that is at the low end of the scale and can only go up, right? So as a real estate investor, I'm attracted to that. All right, so that's a wrap on today's episode. I would love for you to comment below, like, subscribe, so you know whenever I launch a new video or when I go live. So if you want more of The Dave Show, make sure to go to the next one.